Nyonji Morzor, New Major, Zoner Monum Jimborga, Dagger Dargonzanto, Shermurdo. Stumbatic Janla Jonzorlo, Major Terni Jangams, Jaurtition, Laela. Jimmy Benzoja Sorado, Condu Tobambo, Shinjilo, Condu Tobambo, Shinjilo, Condu Tobambo, Shinjilo.
Profound and subtle Dharma is rarely encountered in eons. Now we can hear and follow it. May we realize the Tathagata's meaning. To liberate all sentient beings, please give rise to the unsurpassed and supreme bodhicitta.
Yang di ce Jordan di kirkeli gozir chimbom chute yartong shia chang me pa kongok longu shima ni ki chang da nyambi san gi ji jang kam nam se kyabr shi lar yang ja chimbo shong te san gi ji jang tham chit shang chu san wa chimbo nam da la dang no jin da ma da ma ya nam lan der kit kar sar dang der da shang chu san wa chimbo sai nyam bu chu jin ji ten ji kam tham chit sam gi mi ji bi zam zhi dang shan ba da je Talaf tenner dikdikun be semchen nam jari tsirki number jagbar nam lafto chang ngubru sha go nyang lendi bich dom nyang lendi bich se kyochok shanch sanwat kyewe chimbo namda la dang nojin la sobe tabr dia chimbo laf tennem dor den do chongru shede semchen tamchi jimnyang lendi bi dewa topru sha go dirkut toksung ba na jarki nang do shanch sanwa gand yang ba jibshawi kibe tarmo jatip jondan de lan dirkut surdu Tangdar Jundan de Jib Shanchu Sanhua Sai Nyangbu Shanchu Sanhua Sai Nyangbu Sam Jimmy Jibi Zimcher Nam Lap Tochang Bramza Nap Jundan de Ji Mao Diji Tami Simchen Nam La Pambi Chet Shanchu Sanhua Sai Nyangbu Lada Min Roa Nam La Pambi Pambram Zabi Pambam Zabi Pambram Zabi Roa Nam La Pambam Zabi Pambram Zabi Pambar Pambaram zapi jimji jir nam jak suktan na la dang khla dang la khla devje dang maung mi semjer nam ji sari ji jik song kibe shur lang de nyamsil limbaran gyoru de nip jondin de jipshan chipsan wa kanda yang ba dang kur devje la darkit tab ka tsar to lagbar nyon da ngi ke nam la Shanchu sanwa sayi nyambu lada min ruwar namla pambaram zapi sonam le shionwir namra zhigba nam dipir ko ne tambar shawo teni shanchu sanwa kandu zang kanda yangbe xorwa lagsob chondan de dagchag nam sambarando to chondan de ji kar sarwa shanchu sanwa kanda yangba mao jikten de rikiwa mo kanji ke shanchu sanwa sayi nyambu 찬투네 데라 타르모자르와감 도프르시바감 쳔사르와감 따프르시피 강석남 후카르와 섬치 득불레 다바란 득발린다 그 따프르시피 강석남 카르와 섬치 득발레 카르와 섬치 득불레 득발린다 그런죠 득발레 득발린다 그런죠 근데요 바르키오 뭐 간지키 샨추상과 사이념 그 촌리스 시바감, 예브리스 시바감, 양나 사당, 도당, 닉당, 쓰당, 닉당, 쓰당, 흑세당, 응어당, 응어당, zan당, 척소지 장나, 데라 랑식 타와감, 척랑식 차르 강석는 란 기와르도 섬시삭섬 디네스티네 간송고 네석단들 동으로 만겨 Качылхи сонум запартирна миердер кейтян Ргярбо нетто терне ти хварным йонсы нямбр мандёро ян вдмет ганжик рынг лила сынне лхагсым тагбе шанчусан ва сай нямбу пришкадан садан додан дигдан цыдан хсердан ngырдан зандан чыксу дивжан бир кынжа жарк ла неревжинде чапаме бир тир тагты метогдан пудан заптондан 구당, 구친당, 냠선당, 와든당, ngыр당, rinpoche, 라소짐, 초반바르시나 웹메기 기위 타마르르장 부카라 갸르통 첩적 남스 웹메기 장데 그냥 찌르면저나 딜리렘버 무적고 소 무적고 대형 전체범 대형 셴바다 물음지 스토블라 텐네 쳇트 웹메기 리블라는 조안 젬바는 막도소 데르터션 수상과 사이냐 봄 초반바르 스톱당 손음 Sonum Sopir Topki, Kara Gaston Chapchakavart, Vidme Kirtia Limber Mangiro, Yankanda Yamba, Vidme Kanjika Rangazik, Mardik Badan, Nad Mawala Sunni, Shansu Sanwasai Nyambun, Jarkim Dund, Samba Tarbe Chen Zamgi Rang La Tir, Tawagam, Chum Sarven of Kara Gaston, Kara Tung Chak Varda, Zik Pasum Sobanyata, Kierangero, Zug Mardik Vidmiki Ranga Lilas. Masambar, Shansu Sanhua Sai Nyambum, Chopan Barvashina, Lila Masambar, Shansu Sanhua Sai Mum, Chopan Barvashina, Kara Gaston Shiva Chak Givarta, Tir, Tabarter, Garu Chemodam, Sunmoda, Yana Blumboda, Kimdak So, Rikin Givet Mrs. Kinim, Zidig Dam, Pusum Sobadam, Dumber and Garu.
Today we are discussing the significant chapter 6, the praise of the Tathagata. The main and central focus is on the Buddha praising the immense merits of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva. First and foremost, in order to inspire faith in everyone present, I'll share a truly special efficacy story about Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva. In the past, in the ancient city of Yangzhou, there was a virtuous woman with the esteemed surname Zhang. After her beloved mother tragically passed away, she was left utterly heartbroken and profoundly sorrowful, and she intensely longed to receive some tangible sign or a clear, comforting response from her departed mother. One time she vividly dreamed of seeing her mother. Her mother appeared and told her, "Because during my previous lifetime I was filled with greed and arrogance and committed many bad deeds. It is precisely because of these transgressions that I fell into the desolate realm of hungry ghosts. After entering the desolate realm of hungry ghosts, I truly became a child of the hungry ghosts. But the unfortunate children of hungry ghosts are quite different from other beings. After they are born, because the mother is experiencing extreme hunger, she immediately eats her very own child, and then the sorrowful cycle of rebirth begins all over again. Because of the force of her karma, she is reborn once more as her own child. In this particular way, after being born into the world, she dies again and again, and after dying, the entire cycle starts completely over, being eaten as soon as she is born. With each and every new birth, her mother keeps eating her over and over, relentlessly. The only significant exception is that there is just one specific day in a month, apparently on the 24th, the day when they do not have to endure this suffering any longer. The reason for this, it is said, is because of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva. There was a monk who had renounced the world, who often performed food offerings for the hungry ghosts. Because of these food offerings and also encouraging them to give rise to bodhicitta as a direct result on that specific and particular day, they do not have to experience the heavy pain of being eaten by their very own mother anymore. However, because they suffer so much, they are unable to give rise to bodhicitta. Originally, Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva wanted them to give rise to this aspiration, but they simply could not develop bodhicitta. So she told her beloved daughter, asking if she could possibly create a beautiful statue of Ksitigarbha. If she could indeed make a statue of Ksitigarbha, her profound suffering would certainly come to an end. After waking up from this dream, the daughter hurriedly gathered all of her personal items, her mother's possessions from when she was alive, and sold them all. After selling them, she immediately made a life-size statue of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva, a life-size statue equal to her own body size and shape. After that, she began to make offerings, pray, and pay homage very sincerely every day. After some time, she had another dream that was significant. This dream was completely different from all the previous ones. In the sky, a radiant figure appeared, shining with light very brightly. It told her quite clearly, "Because you created a statue of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva, I was immediately liberated from the realms of suffering and pain. You also continuously make vows and offerings in front of the Ksitigarbha statue with devotion. In this way, in the future, we can be reborn together before Maitreya Bodhisattva and have the opportunity to hear the Dharma. After she awoke from the second dream, she was extremely joyful, feeling deeply that her beloved mother had been saved because of this wonderful occurrence. Afterwards, she also continued to constantly make offerings and pay homage in front of the revered Ksitigarbha statue. She and all others connected to her also received truly great and profound benefit. This particular story primarily talks about how, for those who have passed away, including situations when some of our esteemed Dharma friends, beloved parents, or cherished relatives unfortunately pass away, we also often do not know what to do, where they are in the cycle of rebirth, or in which realm of suffering they might be, and what specific kind of pain they are truly experiencing. It's genuinely hard to accurately say. If we ourselves have the right karmic causes, favorable conditions, and sufficient resources, we can proceed to print the sacred Ksitigarbha Sutra, or meticulously make or respectfully commission a beautiful Ksitigarbha statue, and then dedicate the merit to the deceased. In this way, the blessings of the three jewels are truly inconceivable. The power of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva's vows is also inconceivable, especially if one's relatives have fallen into the lower realms, such as the dreadful hell realms or the suffering hungry ghost realms. They will most certainly receive ultimate salvation. Recently, many Dharma friends have been saying that they are diligently preparing to make or commission beautiful Ksitigarbha statues for their beloved deceased parents and other relatives. This is also a very good and commendable act. As long as one is not being stingy and has the means, one really should do this. But I also sincerely hope that you don't go around everywhere constantly asking for donations. Nowadays, many people, when they themselves truly lack the ability, go around promoting everywhere. Actually, this is really not good. If you yourself do not have the means, and the conditions are not yet fully ripe at this particular moment, so for the time being, please do not do a lot of things just by dressing them up with merely fancy words and superficial appearances, whether it's offering meals, releasing animals, making statues, printing scriptures, or many other things. On one hand, encouraging others to practice virtuous deeds is very good, but on the other hand, if we Buddhists are constantly and perpetually seeking financial donations and engaging in extensive fundraising activities, and often use doing good deeds as an excuse, but in the very end, where the actual funds truly go to in reality, sometimes is unclear and ambiguous. In the very end, there isn't even a proper, clear explanation, telling others, although it initially started out this way, what was done in the middle and what the final result was. There is no such feedback either, in any way. So now, sometimes we Buddhists, we who practice the Dharma, when it comes to the financial accounts of doing good deeds, they are not very transparent. Not transparent both internally and externally. Of course, on one hand, you may be very well-intentioned and truly enthusiastic, but on the other hand, your current methods and approaches are especially unreasonable and quite inappropriate. So in the future, when doing good deeds, these are things we have never tried to stop or discourage. However, in the process of doing good deeds, it should be entirely legal and perfectly reasonable. This is indeed very important. What does it truly mean to be legal? For example, no matter which particular country you happen to live in, every single country possesses its own specific laws, detailed regulations, and established rules. We Buddhists also adhere to and follow a number of important precepts. These are also laws, also a kind of rule. Whether you are a lay practitioner or a monastic, or someone who has taken refuge in the three jewels, if you ask others for money recklessly and without restraint, in some places this is also illegal. In addition to this, it should truly be in line with human feelings. What exactly does that mean? Some people simply do not truly understand this particular kind of sentiment. They frequently ask everyone they encounter for money at will, aggressively demanding that people give, insisting they take it out immediately. Some people on the surface have no choice but to hand over money, but in reality they are very unwilling and feel very uncomfortable inside. This is also not in line with human feelings and so on. There are many reasons. Therefore, whenever we perform any virtuous and commendable deed, we should always strive to do so with a deeply rational and thoughtful approach. We should meticulously and thoroughly consider many important issues and potential consequences from the very beginning to the ultimate end. Especially, we should be extremely careful not to improperly or falsely use the revered name of some spiritual guru, for example, a certain guru's retreat room, a certain guru's meditation room, or a certain guru's institute or dharma hall in some place, and then attach a guru's name to it at the end for credibility. The guru himself has no idea about it at all, and then some things are sold under his name. If something truly unfortunate happens as a direct result of this, I think the spiritual guru is really quite pitiful, because for absolutely no reason at all, he's already been completely used and sold by other people. This is also very unreasonable. Using his name in this way, actually, back when Buddhism was quite prosperous, this significant phenomenon also happened in the region of Tibetan area. At that particular time, Tibetan area especially revered some influential Indian monks. However, some of the local people in Tibetan area started to see a significant and promising business opportunity emerging. They would say, "Oh, this is for making offerings to Indian monks." Because during both the early and later propagation periods, many Indian monks journeyed to Tibetan area, bringing their teachings. Since India is the source of Buddhism, many people in Tibetan area had deep faith. At that time, there were some certain individuals. Of course, some people genuinely wanted to make offerings, but there were also some individuals who acted purely out of their own personal self-interest. So, as devoted Buddhists, we must always remember, when we create statues or perform virtuous deeds in the future, I sincerely hope that everyone will take full responsibility for their own personal karma. I truly hope that each and every one of us, if you want to make use of a certain monastery or take advantage of a certain lama, at the very least you must go through that person or through the highest level administrator of that particular monastery. If you absolutely don't do this, for example, I also frequently encounter this kind of situation quite often nowadays. Some people, of course, are acting entirely out of a deceptive mindset and intention, seeking personal gain for themselves. This is another type of person. Some people may have good intentions from the beginning, but the way they go about things in practice also leads to very irrational and unreasonable outcomes in the end that are quite unfortunate indeed. This kind of phenomenon has always existed. So, as devoted Buddhists, it's truly best not to use someone else's sacred name or to take undue advantage of someone else's established Dharma center, unless a certain Lama truly says, "Right now, I am really, really short of money, and I really want to make a statue of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva, but recently I don't have a single cent." If he asks, "Can you think of a way you can use my name?" whether the Lama hints at it, states it explicitly, or even expresses it in a vague or ambiguous way. If that is indeed the case, then you are acting entirely according to the Lama's wishes. You alone truly and fully understand the Lama's genuine intention, so you must act accordingly. But if that's not the case, it could actually seriously harm the Lama. Why exactly is that? Because he never even once thought about it, not even in his wildest dreams or imagination, about making any statue or doing anything like that. But when you promote it outside, you use his name without permission. Some people even pretend as if they really know very well, as if he told them personally. Nowadays, many people pretend to be close to the Lama, when in fact the Lama has no such intention at all. But if you pretend, others might genuinely think, "Oh, he really is someone quite close to the Lama." Then he often shows things like, for example, "The Lama sent me a WeChat message. The Lama actually called me." Or, "I had direct contact with the Lama in question at some point in time." But actually this doesn't mean anything. If, on your WeChat account, the Lama explicitly and distinctly sent a voice message stating he hopes you will do such and such, then you just listen to that voice message. But most of the other indications can't necessarily definitively prove anything. So I truly think that whenever it specifically comes to making statues, releasing animals, or other similar things like that, some individuals tend to go to rather extreme lengths. For example, every time I give a teaching, many people, though not today, but I'm worried that after some time someone will say, Khenpo is planning to make a Ksitigarbha statue. You rejoice, accumulate merit, Especially now, there are people who want to deceive others. These people now, in my classes, listeners truly faithful, some people are listening just to find faults, and some are truly hoping to find something valuable here. For example, when I talk about the Vajrakala, today I talk about Vajrakala, and tomorrow on WeChat someone says, who needs the Vajrakala I talked about yesterday? I have some here for you to request. Then a lot of people say, yes, 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 with great enthusiasm indeed, and start requesting them one after another eagerly. So regarding the Ksitigarbha statue, I might talk about it often in the future, saying that the merit of the Ksitigarbha statue is immense, but you shouldn't use this as a way to make money for yourself. Otherwise, even Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva would not be pleased. If you say this is blessed by a certain Lama or blessed by Larungar, when in fact it was never blessed at all, but you claim it was. There was no mention of making this statue, or this is a statue made by so-and-so. Doing this might not be good. So you should pay a little attention to this matter. Indeed, the profound merit of the Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva statue is truly real, but whatever meritorious deeds we sincerely want to do, there also needs to be a proper process. There also needs to be a proper and appropriate method. Just now, this unfortunate hungry ghost explicitly said that she tragically became the child of a hungry ghost, constantly suffering the relentless pain of being devoured by her own mother. This deeply disturbing revelation isn't just mentioned in the previous case. It's a recurring theme. It's also described in a pearl grove in the Garden of Dharma. There is a very similar and compelling account recorded there as well. Once, during a significant moment, when the Venerable Maudgalyayana encountered a suffering hungry ghost, the hungry ghost, in its immense agony, cried out and said, "I am experiencing profound and unbearable pain." When asked what kind of pain, she said that during the day she gives birth to 5 children and then quite immediately eats them all. At night she gives birth to another 5 children and eats them all again. Even though she eats 10 children every single day, she is still not completely full and consequently suffers immensely. So the karmic power of sentient beings is truly inconceivable beyond our imagination. In the animal realm, some also eat their own offspring in certain circumstances. Such things also happen in the animal world surprisingly often nowadays. In the realm of hungry ghosts, it is also due to special karma. From the perspective of us as humans, this is indeed very hard to accept and quite unimaginable. So even those who are reborn in the hungry ghost realm, such suffering beings, by relying on the miraculous power of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva, by relying on the blessings of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva, there is also a chance for liberation. Everyone should remember this point. Next, we will talk about the significant chapter, the praise of the Tathagata, which is an important section. At that time, the world-honored one, Shakyamuni Buddha, emitted a great light from his entire body. When the Buddha emits a brilliant light, sometimes it emanates from between his eyebrows, sometimes from his fingers or toes, or from his navel, his upper body, or his head. There are indeed different places. Here, entire body should truly mean that his whole body emitted a great and powerful light. It illuminated the worlds of Buddhas as numerous as hundreds of thousands of millions of Ganges sands. This is the Buddha emitting light. At that time he wanted to offer praise, so he released this light. At the same time he produced a great sound. He universally announced to all the Bodhisattva Mahasattvas in all the Buddha worlds. These great Bodhisattvas, on one hand, the Buddha emitted a brilliant, radiant light, and on the other hand, he produced an especially beautiful, profoundly melodious, and truly enchanting sound, resounding deeply with all who heard it, telling all these great Bodhisattvas in all the Buddha worlds, as well as Devas, powerful dragons, spirits, all humans and various non-humans, and so on. Here there are absolutely no Buddhas mentioned, precisely because when the Buddha emits a brilliant light or produces a profound sound, this is specifically directed toward bodhisattvas, all humans, non-humans, and so on. After emitting this sound, listen closely as I now extol and truly praise the great and compassionate, most revered Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva Mahasattva, who in all the worlds of the 10 directions manifests great inconceivable power of majesty and compassion, and rescues all beings suffering from the consequences of their misdeeds. He praises Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva. And what does he praise about Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva? Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva, among all the worlds of the 10 directions, he displays inconceivable power and compassion, well as the act of rescuing all sentient beings. What he praises is not something like Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva, dignified in appearance, or how high Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva can jump very high into the air, or that Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva is great at playing basketball and other sports or similar activities. In our world today, many of the things we praise as merits are along these lines when you really think carefully, right? For example, whether it's between countries around the world or during many competitions held every single year, everyone gives gold and silver medals to these people, those who are really good at high jump or skiing and so on in various sports. The individuals who win gold or silver medals, or those who are truly excellent at horse racing and similar sports and so on and forth. But the Buddha does not praise these worldly things. So what exactly does he praise? It is the profound power of compassion, the inherent ability to save all suffering sentient beings. Actually, in the future, we should also praise Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva just as the Buddha does. When we praise Mahayana Buddhists, we should also focus on this very important point. For example, some esteemed Dharma teachers, they often, when praising their disciples, they should certainly do so in this thoughtful and considered way as well at all times. For example, praising a particular disciple for making a substantial amount of money through hard work, or perhaps commending someone for achieving significant milestones in this or that specific area of endeavor, or how they handle their personal affairs. These things are not very important. We should praise when someone goes out, sentient beings they have benefited, how they have helped relieve the suffering of sentient beings, and the spirit to save others from suffering. Praising them in this regard is very important. To rescue all sentient beings who are suffering and in distress, after the Buddha's parinirvana, you great bodhisattvas, as well as heavenly beings, dragons, spirits, and so on, should use all kinds of skillful and ingenious means to diligently protect this sacred sutra. At that significant time, on one hand, the Buddha profoundly praised Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva's immense and boundless wisdom, inconceivable spirit in saving sentient beings, and praised this quality. And what else is there? After the Buddha's parinirvana, you great bodhisattvas, as well as heavenly beings, dragons, and yakshas, what is your task? You must rely on all kinds of skillful means to protect this sutra. In this way, all sentient beings can attain the bliss of nirvana in the very ultimate sense, without any exception at all. Therefore, throughout his life in this world of ours, the Buddha mainly sought to help these sentient beings attain liberation. In fact, protecting the sacred sutras, or diligently cultivating great loving kindness and profound compassion, is what truly saves all living and precious sentient beings. The Bequeathed Teachings Sutra was originally translated by the esteemed Kumarajiva. I am wondering if it could possibly be translated into Tibetan in the near future soon. This sutra says in the beginning, when the Buddha first turned the sacred wheel of Dharma, he first liberated Kondinya and the 5 ascetics, among others. That was the start of the first turning of the wheel of Dharma. Then came the second and third turnings of the wheel of Dharma. At the very end of the third turning of the wheel of Dharma, he crossed over the Venerable Subhadra, which means good virtue or wonderful virtue, and the last sentient being he transformed and guided was the Venerable Subhadra. After this profound and ultimate act, the Buddha's entire life's work, his mission of enlightenment and salvation, was truly and utterly complete. Once his monumental task was completely fulfilled, on a pure, serene, and exceptionally quiet night, laying peacefully between the majestic twin sala trees, he gave his final and most profound teachings to a small, dedicated group of his loyal disciples. In these final teachings, the Buddha first spoke about the sacred Pratimoksha precepts, the specific rules. The Pratimoksha precepts are truly the foundation of all virtues. After I pass into nirvana, the Pratimoksha precepts will be your most sole and esteemed guiding teacher. If you have the Pratimoksha precepts, then there is no difference between my presence in this world and my absence. I remember when I first talked about this, that is why in Han region there is the Sutra of the Buddha's last teaching, and in Pali as well there is the Sutra of the Buddha's last teaching. So as disciples of the Buddha at the very beginning, what kind of dharma did the Buddha teach sentient beings? And at the time of the Buddha's final nirvana, it is also clearly mentioned here that after attaining nirvana, the enlightened state, the fourfold assembly of disciples is required to carefully protect these scriptures, to spread these scriptures, and make them widely known. This is also truly one of the Buddha's profound hopes for us. Additionally, sacred texts like the Sutra of the Buddha's last teaching are indeed the Buddha's final, crucial instructions as well. I don't know if our esteemed Dharma friends in the past have read or studied them before. In the future, we should also endeavor to understand the Buddha's profound last teaching sutra, because we all know that the Buddha came to this world and turned the wheel of 84,000 Dharma teachings, and at the time of his final manifestation of nirvana, what exactly did the Buddha tell us? This should be clear. Of course, at the very beginning, the main audience the Buddha taught at that time were monastics. So, at the very beginning of the Sutra of the Buddha's last teaching, it might be considered rather conservative. You could say it mainly follows the monastic precepts of early Buddhism and the southern tradition. At the very start, it teaches to take the precepts as your teacher. Of course, if you take the precepts as your teacher, you will be content and have few desires. In the world, many people pursue all kinds of business for fame and profit, and all of these are to be restrained. So as Buddhists, we should consider, what did the Buddha ultimately leave behind? Especially for monastics, this is something truly worth paying close attention to at all times indeed. Next, after the Buddha had finished saying these important words with great sincere care, the Buddha then said, "I want to praise the Venerable Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva." As soon as he had finished speaking these words, there was a bodhisattva in the assembly named universally vast Bodhisattva. He joined his palms respectfully and addressed the Buddha, saying, "Today I have actually truly and clearly seen Shakyamuni Buddha." Emphatically praise Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva Mahasattva, who possesses such truly inconceivable spiritual power and immense merit. I sincerely and earnestly hope that the world-honored one, for the sake of all sentient beings in the future age of the Dharma's decline, will graciously expound on precisely how Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva profoundly benefits these sentient beings, especially in terms of the benefits that humans and celestial beings can receive. Both in terms of causes and effects, these matters should be explained. Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva, for sentient beings, in both the aspects of cause and effect, how exactly can we obtain these benefits? This really should be explained to us. In this way, whether it is the 8 classes of heavenly and dragon beings or sentient beings of the future, they will all respectfully accept the Buddha's words and practice accordingly, in accordance with the Dharma and proper principles. This was during the great assembly held at that particular time, when Bodhisattva Universal Vast represented all sentient beings of that time and the future with great sincere compassion and very deep profound reverence, and requested the Buddha to turn such a Dharma wheel. At this moment, the Buddha addressed Bodhisattva Universal Vast and the fourfold assembly of disciples, saying, "Listen carefully, listen very carefully, I will now briefly explain for you. The meritorious deeds of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva in truly benefiting humans and heavenly beings, as previously mentioned, concern the causes and effects of benefiting humans and heavenly beings." Here the Buddha says, "Listen carefully, I will explain briefly." It will be a concise explanation, not a broad or general one. It should be a simple explanation of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva, how he profoundly benefits all sentient beings within the human realm, and how he extensively benefits all sentient beings in the celestial heavenly realms. These crucial and significant things should be very clearly and thoroughly explained to you. This is what the Buddha instructed. When the Buddha gave this instruction, Universal Vast Bodhisattva respectfully said, "Indeed, world-honored one, we wish to hear." We hope the world-honored one will quickly expound this teaching to us. We are especially eager and willing, and sincerely wished to hear about the merits of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva. The Buddha told universal vast Bodhisattva and the great Bodhisattvas as the main audience that in the future, in the world, if there are any good men or any good women who hear the sacred name of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva Mahasattva, and after hearing it, either join their palms in respect. There are those who join both hands together, those who join one hand, and various other ways of joining the palms. As we mentioned before when discussing the words of my perfect teacher, there is a way of joining the palms like a Gao box, and there are many various different methods of joining the palms, whether it is joining the palms or offering praise. For example, using the praise to Ksitigarbha to offer praise or verbally praising, saying, "Wow, the merits of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva are truly inconceivable. People with virtuous roots, all their actions are often creating merit and offering praise, or making devout prostrations, whether they are full-body prostrations or half-body prostrations, in front of the sacred image of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva, or even just upon merely hearing his revered name, and also truly feeling a deep longing, having profound faith, sincere respect, and genuine admiration for him. In this way, a person can transcend the negative karma of 30 kalpas. All the negative karma this person has accumulated over 30 kalpas. All the negative karma of body, speech, and mind can all be purified and completely transcended. So here we can clearly see that the Ksitigarbha practice is actually a very effective and powerful method for sincerely repenting and purifying karmic obstacles. For example, in the past, the karma created by our body, the karma created by our speech, and the karma created in our mind, for instance, the karma created by the body, if you join your palms and make prostrations, then it can be purified. As for the karma created by speech, it can be purified by praising or reciting the name of Ksitigarbha. Then regarding the karma created in the mind, such as harboring wrong views towards him and so on, if we give rise to a mind of joy towards him, or develop a deep sense of admiration or a strong, profound respect, these mental states can lead to purification. So generally speaking, the karma we create is nothing more than body, speech, and mind. And to create merit also requires body, speech, and mind. Some people who do not understand Buddhist principles may not know the meaning of joining our palms together. On the surface, it looks like when you put your palms together, it's just a kind of ritual, a formality. But in reality, by relying on this, through various different postures of the human body, you could say it effectively purifies your entire body, including the bodily karma of killing, stealing, and sexual misconduct, all of which can be completely purified. When you recite or praise with your mouth, what effect does this have? Since beginningless time in terms of speech, including harsh words, evil speech, divisive speech, these kinds of verbal misdeeds can be purified. If in your heart you give rise to faith and respect for him, then the karma created mainly by greed, anger, and ignorance since beginningless time can be purified. So here it says, after hearing the name of a Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva, even if we do something this simple, the negative karma accumulated over such a long period can also be purified. For example, if I have created negative karma for 30 years or 20 years, some people often say with great regret, indeed, before I became a monk, I used to run a restaurant in the city, I used to go to brothels, I used to frequently slander others without even thinking, and so on. These are very frightening karmic actions of body, speech, and mind. But if you sincerely and wholeheartedly prostrate and praise in front of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva, then these can also be purified. Actually, this is also what the Buddha said. Because of our negative karma accumulated over time, the faults of our actions in the past are also spoken of by the Buddha. The Buddha is omniscient in every single way regarding the karmic consequences of good and evil actions of all sentient beings. The blessing power of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva is truly immense. Sometimes when we talk about these merits with deep sincerity, we still feel very hopeful and quite encouraged. As I mentioned before, there was a monk who would tell others stories about karma and making choices between good and bad. He would sometimes say, sometimes when you reach the top of a mountain and loudly recite the Avalokiteshvara heart mantra, then all the mountains, rivers, grasses and trees around you are also reciting the Avalokiteshvara heart mantra. So you receive the merit of all the grasses and trees reciting it as well. That could be hundreds of thousands, even billions. The merit is immense. When he spoke about the merit of virtuous deeds, he would sometimes say, perhaps this is a well-known story from our Tibetan region that many people have heard before. He said, actually, we are also quite capable of creating negative karma in many different ways. For example, when we eat a bowl of tsampa, he said, because farmers plow the fields and plant crops, many small insects are killed in the process. So, in fact, it's not much different from eating insects directly. Later, among the audience, there was an old woman who said, "Now I'm confused, I don't know anything anymore." The Lama asked, "Why is that?" She replied, "Whenever you talk about the merit of virtuous deeds, not to mention you as a Lama, even I feel hopeful. I go up mountain to recite Avalokiteshvara heart mantra. But whenever you always talk about the faults of evil deeds, and not to mention me, even you are in great danger, because you eat tsampa every single day. So if a simple bowl of tsampa is truly no different from a bowl of insects, I think you also certainly can't attain liberation. It's very, very dangerous." So indeed, the merit of virtuous deeds and the faults of negative karma are both extremely serious matters. Next, the Buddha said, "Universal vast, if there are any good men or good women who paint images of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva, or make them out of natural earth or fine clay, or carefully carve them from solid stone as impressive stone statues. Nowadays, we have beautiful marble and all kinds of durable stone materials available for making them, and there are also some modern resin materials. I'm not entirely sure about the current situation, but in the past, various different materials were carefully piled together with some fine cloth meticulously placed on top, and then some clear protective lacquer was skillfully applied over it. Furthermore, some exquisite statues were expertly made using durable resin and traditional lacquer, and there are also statues made of gold and silver. There are also statues made of bronze, iron, and so on. In short, Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva statues can be made from different materials. Some are painted just like traditional thankas from ancient times past, while others are more like actual photographs, not hand-painted at all. Nowadays, some computer-generated images are also very well done. No matter what kind of material is used, if you make a statue of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva and then pay homage to it, even with a single glance or bow, if you look with a respectful mind, and especially bow to it with great reverence, what kind of karmic result will this person receive? They will be reborn 100 times indeed in the glorious heaven of the 33. They will absolutely never fall into the 3 lower realms of existence. Actually, for us sentient beings of this very Jambudvapa, whether it's the heaven of the 33 or other fortunate realms, to be reborn in these very sacred places indeed many times, and never fall into the lower realms, especially having the profound assurance of not falling into the lower realms of existence. I think that's very, very important. In the past, in Gama Lingpa's renowned Bardo Thodol text, he often said, "My tantric teachings are considered relatively open tantric teachings. Everyone can see, hear, and be aware of them. If one listens to the teachings of the 6 bardos, 3 or even 5 times that individual will certainly not fall into the lower realms of existence." At that moment, we were all profoundly delighted to hear this wonderful news. So, in front of my most precious Guru, I have already listened to this teaching 3 times. Sometimes it truly seems I also have a genuine hope of not falling into the lower realms, but sometimes, honestly, it's quite hard to say for sure. Never falling into the lower realms is very important. Those who prostrate or gaze in reverence before the image of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva, gazing in reverence is very important. Some of us, when we see images of Buddhas or Bodhisattvas, truly feel this deep faith within us, with expressions so moved that our eyes fill with tears. When we see especially majestic statues in temples and sacred places, we develop even greater faith deep in our hearts. This is also acceptable. Or you can prostrate before the Buddha statue with devotion. Nowadays, some of us, perhaps because of our own beliefs, even though we see the statue of Shakyamuni Buddha or the statue of a Bodhisattva or Tara, we are still unwilling to put our palms together or to prostrate ourselves. This indeed is the situation for many arrogant people. In the future, as Buddhists, It doesn't matter which school or tradition you belong to. Whenever you are in front of a Buddha statue or in a temple hall, it's best to let go of all your pride. Then go and prostrate, then go and then pay homage. It is extremely important. If a person's heavenly merit has been exhausted and they are reborn in the human realm, most of the time upon rebirth they fall into the Avicii hell. Just as it is described in the letter to a friend, after their heavenly blessings are depleted, many people fall into the Avicii hell. However, those who previously prostrated to Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva, after being reborn as humans, can still become kings and not lose their significant great benefits. For some kings, it would actually be better if they weren't kings. They create a lot of negative karma, for example, by destroying the supports of the three jewels, or by harming sentient beings, or by bringing truly unspeakable suffering and immense hardship to their entire nation, causing widespread devastation. But some kings, when reborn as humans, become kings of Dharma, bringing lasting peace, abundant merit, and profound happiness to the entire nation, encompassing all its citizens and every individual within its borders. Such blessings continue to appear without interruption. Moreover, everything in the country enjoys favorable weather and timely rain, especially if the king himself has some faith. Just as described in the treatise on the teachings for kings, those kings of Dharma who truly possess faith, they diligently build magnificent Buddhist temples and establish serene places of spiritual practice, make generous offerings to the monastic community, and venerate sacred Buddha images. Furthermore, with profound compassion, they actively protect all sentient beings and so on. All their noble and selfless actions are wholeheartedly dedicated to benefiting the people and the entire nation, fostering peace and prosperity for all, and would not resort to extremely selfish, utterly ruthless, and truly cruel actions that inflict harm upon both themselves and all those around them. Therefore, some kings, despite their initial intentions, may ultimately lose out on great and substantial benefits, even though for the time being they might appear to be succeeding. They hold a very certain high position and significant power themselves in society. In reality, for the whole world in many different places and all its inhabitants, they bring unrest and fear and great suffering to countless people without any mercy, and even cause wars and famines to break out in numerous places across the world everywhere. Because if the decisions of some truly great kings are not wise at all, they invariably bring about such profound and widespread harm to the entire nation and its people. This, without a doubt, is an undeniable and fundamental natural law. So, as for the specific kind of prayer to the revered Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva that was just mentioned, or those who show respect to images of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva, even if they were to venture into the human world, they would absolutely not bring any harm or danger to the neighboring countries, nor would they inflict any harm upon themselves or any other individuals. Therefore, images of Ksitigarbha are also of great importance. There is a significant collection housed within the National Library of France, which contains a short version of the Sutra of the Buddha speaks of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva, but it is said to be a manuscript unearthed from Dunhuang. Of course, regarding the Dunhuang discoveries, some scholars now say they are both genuine and fake ones, but we dare not say that this one is not good. However, indeed, the specific usage of certain words and phrases within it seems to be a little different from those commonly found in traditional Buddhism. Perhaps it is somewhat similar to folk expressions. But this particular sutra is still relatively short. It states that if some individuals, for example, make images of Ksitigarbha or write the Ksitigarbha Sutra and reverently recite the sacred name of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva, they will receive immense blessings. This person can be reborn in the Western Pure Land of ultimate bliss. Moreover, from one heaven to another there are many wonders and mysteries. They will continuously be reborn in pure lands, there is such a saying. Therefore, the act of creating sacred images also brings forth immense merit, offering significant spiritual benefits to the practitioner. Furthermore, in the sutra on the merits of making images, it is stated that if an individual, particularly at the very end of their life, makes a solemn vow and firm commitment to create a sacred image, even if that image is exceptionally small, perhaps even minuscule in size, as small as a barley grain or as tiny as a grain of rice, if one creates even such a small and humble image, then that devoted person will not fall into the lower suffering realms of existence and will obtain boundless and immeasurable merit. It is widely said that the negative karma accumulated over 80 billion kalpas can be completely purified, and one can truly attain 11 distinct kinds of merits. The sutra on the merits of making images describes these one by one, such as not falling into the lower realms, having a dignified and attractive appearance, and so on. Therefore, generally speaking, some people, for example, may be more academically inclined Buddhists in their approach, and therefore do not pay particular attention to making images or reciting the Buddha's sacred name. Actually, this is related to one's own academic field or to their specific area of expertise. I truly think that those individuals who are highly specialized in their professions should genuinely let go of their inherent arrogance. When it truly comes to genuine faith as a devout Buddhist, they should earnestly study and thoroughly learn about it in detail. This is necessary. As for those of us who are not really so quite specialized, actually, as I mentioned earlier, we have great faith in making images and reciting mantras. But when it comes to more theoretical topics, you see, or when things get a little bit deeper, they start dozing off, or perhaps even getting totally lost to understand. That's not quite right either, because as devoted Buddhists, we should truly understand things both deeply and broadly. We absolutely need worldly roots of virtue and merit, and also a strong foundation. And we also need the ultimate profound roots of virtue and merit. These ultimate and worldly roots, just as the revered master Shantarakshita wisely said, are truly like a pair of essential wings. If you possess both the strong and balanced wings of the ultimate understanding and the worldly practices, then you can truly soar and achieve your goals. You can soar freely in the vast sky of all that can be known. If you rely solely on just one aspect, the worldly merit, I'm truly afraid you won't be able to go very far, because you haven't realized the state of emptiness and selflessness. Therefore, our worldly understanding can only lead to rebirth in a merely good realm, nothing more. If you only rely on the ultimate view of emptiness in your practice, but neglect all the worldly roots of virtue and merit that are important along the way, even though your goal is very noble and admirable, before you reach that beautiful vision you have set for yourself in your mind, after all, you are still a traveler, currently immersed in the mundane world. In this case, you may never actually get there, because you are now truly and indeed neglecting all of the worldly roots of virtue. As a result, it will be very difficult for you to reach the truly wonderful state that you deeply aspire to achieve. So, when it comes to the process of making statues and other similar artistic creations for us, whether it's related to our profession, our deeply held faith, or our own personal interests, some individuals just don't take it seriously at all, unfortunately. Venerable Patrul Rinpoche specifically talked about the merits of the supports of the three jewels. In this regard, it's important to show respect to the supports of the three jewels. It seems that recently I heard that a Khenpo here is also teaching this in Tibetan. I used to think about translating it, but in the end I didn't. There are some scriptural citations in it. When I used to teach the Lotus Sutra, I referenced them. Venerable Patrul Rinpoche specifically addressed the supports of the three jewels in both the Mahayana and Hinayana traditions. As practitioners, there are some teachings that we should respect. Actually, we shouldn't ignore these teachings either. There should be consecration and empowerment ceremonies, and we should regularly prostrate before Buddha statues. As devoted Buddhists, this is truly something we ought to do. I once met a very dedicated Buddhist practitioner individual. He had been studying Buddhism for more than 10 years. What did he say? He said, "I meditate on emptiness every day. I am very interested in contemplating emptiness." I asked, "Do you recite the Buddha's name?" He said, "No, I don't." I asked, "Do you give rise to bodhicitta?" He said, "No, I don't." I asked, and then, Do you happen to have a Buddha statue or a sacred shrine at your home, perhaps?" He said, "No, I truly do not." He just thought to himself that he had the special faith in ultimate bodhicitta. He had read the Ornament of the Middle Way many times. He had also read the Fundamental Wisdom of the Middle Way many times. So what was he? He was someone with a single-minded inclination toward the ultimate meaning. But I was concerned about whether he could reach the highest state, because among all his actions, the best thing he did was study the Middle Way. Other than that, nothing else. He had no interest in reciting sutras, making images, or anything else. I also wouldn't dare say that he had no realization in other areas. But in terms of his personal interests, he neither recited nor practiced. He was always like this, which might not be very good either. So I think that sometimes we should also value things like making Buddha statues. These are very good as well. And also, when it comes to consecration, many of our monastics nowadays don't understand how to do consecration. I think both are monks and nuns. In the past, we had a consecration group here. But actually, there's no need for a special group. As for consecration, if there are some who understand it, they can teach everyone. Consecration is not something very difficult either. For example, there are a few important mantras included inside, and there are also some essential materials needed within as well. Originally, in the past, both Khenpo Kunzang and Khenpo Chome had their own unique methods for consecration. Nowadays, in the Han region, we specifically invite some experienced Tibetan lamas to perform the consecration. But actually, this is not really necessary. According to the Han tradition of Buddhist consecration, it's quite simple. The Tibetan Buddhist method of consecration is a bit more complicated than this. But as long as you have the sacred things to properly do the sacred consecration, then everything should be fine. You need to have some mantras and some of the required materials, including things like incense and also water inside. Then that's all perfectly acceptable and entirely fine. But some of the consecration papers that are used are said to not be very clean paper. This is something to pay attention to. Because when we do consecration, we must use especially clean items such as precious substances. But during the consecration, it's best not to include things like a master's dharma robe, a master's hair, or a master's fingernails. These things should not be included in the consecration. Masters have repeatedly emphasized this. If these things are included in the consecration, it will be very unfavorable for the master. So, when it truly comes to the act of consecration, I believe that many of us can certainly learn to perform it ourselves as well. Some of you are consecration masters, so you can teach your skills to others. Don't be overly secretive. This also applies to some of our artists who paint Buddha images. It's the same situation. Some artists are very skilled at painting themselves, but they have never trained any disciples. So when you pass away, your skills may die with you, with no one to inherit them. In fact, what is the saddest thing? When a person in this world has especially rich experience and knowledge, but when you eventually die, it all leaves you as well. The skills are gone too, completely. This is the saddest thing of all. So it's the same for a revered master. When he eventually passes away, if there is truly no one to succeed him, if there is absolutely no one to carry on his precious lineage, that is indeed a profoundly sad and unfortunate thing. By the same logic, each of us, indeed, in what specific area do you truly feel? For example, whether it's painting or perhaps making intricate crafts, or if you are learning something else entirely new. Some of us, even if it's just a small acquired skill, are especially adept at. We treat it as a trade secret, a technical secret, and are particularly unwilling to share it with others. Unless you have a specific, legally binding confidential agreement in place with other business partners. If not, as Mahayana Bodhisattvas, we should rejoice and willingly share freely the valuable knowledge we have with others. If others also share it, then it can be passed down from generation to generation. So this is what I just mentioned about making sacred objects. Next, if there are some women who really dislike their very own bodies for some reason, and feel that their bodies, being female, have many things to dislike, then if they wholeheartedly make offerings to images of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva, including clay statues, stone statues, and lacquer statues, as well as bronze and iron statues, and so on. It does not mention gold or silver. Some women do not wish to use gold or silver statues. If she truly persists every single day, without giving up, without any interruption whatsoever, and often makes generous offerings of beautiful flowers, fragrant incense, delicious food, and fine clothing, as well as vibrantly colored silks and elaborate banners, and also precious money and valuable treasures. If she uses these to make offerings, then when this virtuous woman's current life comes to an end, when this karmic retribution, this body, is finished for hundreds of thousands of kalpas, she will never again be born in a world where there are any women, let alone actually being born with a female body again, unless in some cases it is out of compassion and the power of vows, and she especially wishes to take on a female body to help sentient beings, then that is a different situation. So here it is explained quite clearly today that if some women particularly dislike their own physical form for various reasons, because, as described in the Buddhist scriptures, sometimes women may feel troubled by their own afflictions in many different ways, such as intense greed, anger, and jealousy, which may often be more intense than in men, or in some specific cases due to their own unique physiology, there are also noticeable differences when compared to men, including pregnancy and other significant physiological aspects. There are many, many different illnesses. In such specific cases, some women truly dislike their female bodies, often saying that they do not wish to be women in their next life, asserting that being a woman is simply too exhausting, too painful, and far too troublesome. Many people feel that when they look at men, they perceive a life of greater ease and fewer burdens. They seem to be much more at ease and comfortable in every single aspect of their lives. As for women, perhaps in the past, due to the gender inequality that was prevalent at that particular historical time, a situation which unfortunately existed in every country across the globe, both in the Eastern and Western hemispheres. I don't know under what system, but it seems that it's basically the same everywhere, north, south, east, and west. When I went to Africa and to some European and American countries, I would ask them about their history, and almost all of them had a preference for men over women. Perhaps under such systems, there were also many situations where women were not truly free in their personal lives. And there's another thing. In the past, it was an agricultural society. In many countries around the world, in the past, society used to be mainly based on extensive crop farming. At that particular time, men would generally go out to work and earn a living, while women typically stayed at home to raise and nurture their children. During that historical period, a significant amount of power and influence was also predominantly in the hands of men. But now, in the modern industrial and commercial era, as long as you have the ability, I think things may not be exactly quite the same as they once were before. I've seen that nowadays many major donors and big bosses are truly strong women. Many of them are even more capable and highly skilled than most men. They manage men extremely successfully and effectively in various situations. Of course, this is not to say that all women are dissatisfied with their own bodies. As mentioned earlier, some do so for the sake of benefiting sentient beings, and sometimes bodhisattvas also take the form of women to help sentient beings. They even appear as beautiful women to benefit sentient beings. This is also mentioned in the Great Illusory Net Tantra. Some female figures like Tara and some dakinis, as well as female bodhisattvas. By appearing as a woman, she brings even more joy to sentient beings. She even brings immense joy and profound happiness to many revered Buddhas and bodhisattvas. In fact, nowadays, some things are different from the past. I think the interests of society as a whole have also changed. In the past, it was generally observed that people overwhelmingly preferred men who consistently appeared to be exceptionally brave and courageous, who possessed a spirit of heroism and fearlessness. People with particularly strong and impressive physiques were widely admired. Back in the 1980s, many of us especially liked the legendary figure Huo Yuanjia. People with powerful muscles were very popular and celebrated back then, but it doesn't seem to be the case now. Nowadays, many people truly prefer those who are quite fair-skinned and clean-cut. A lot of young people like what they call little fresh meat, so in this case it's not necessarily the same anymore. Perhaps everyone truly has their own different values and perspectives. Perhaps the times are different too. Sometimes it's even hard to tell the difference between men and women. For some people, it's unclear whether they're male or female. Everyone has their own distinct preferences for what they truly like and enjoy. Therefore, every era or period might present different tastes and inclinations. But no matter what, if you make such a solemn vow, relying on the power of the merit and causes from making offerings to Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva, you will not be reborn as a woman for hundreds of thousands of kalpas. Also, the Buddha told Universal Vast, if there are some women who are dissatisfied, who are especially unattractive, often sick, and whose physical bodies are quite different from those of men afflicted with all kinds of illnesses and various ailments, there is a significant sutra called the Sutra on Transforming the Female Body, as spoken by the Buddha. This sutra thoroughly discusses some significant physiological differences between women and men, including the notable detail that women have 100 families of worms within their bodies, with each family quite possibly referring to a distinct cluster or group, which is quite different from men. These tiny worms are present during both regular and irregular times, and sometimes women may exhibit certain behaviors because of this persistent presence, which might lead to significant inner turmoil and emotional distress. Sometimes I think, of course not all women, but for some women, whether they are monastics or lay people, they seem to become unhappy for no apparent reason. For no clear reason, they become especially like that. I really think this is quite different from the case of men in general. And sometimes, over some very small matters, they might not even realize they've already offended someone. And once they've taken offense, they may never speak to that person again. Perhaps in her own mind, she truly thinks that it was indeed a very huge issue and that she has been deeply, deeply hurt. Logically speaking, whether it's in words, whether it's in actions or in the heart, some people may have never hurt anyone at all. But they themselves truly and genuinely feel just like what was mentioned earlier in the ancient Buddhist scriptures. If there are indeed 100 parasites on the body, is it truly that whenever these tiny parasites make even a slight movement, for example, every single month or perhaps every day, or at certain times, they display some other behaviors for no reason at all, completely out of the blue? I've met many Buddhists who are like this. Even monastics are like this. Why is it that this person is so good at study and contemplation, but after a period of time it seems, well, you can't say they've gone crazy, but they really become like a completely different person from before. It's as if they've become an entirely different person. This might also happen among men. There really are some men like this. However, if you carefully consider the overall proportion, it is definitely less common for men to behave in this particular way. Consequently, if someone has the significant responsibility to manage both men and women, then they can make a comparison and gain valuable experience with such data and further accumulate crucial experience in the process of collecting such data. For me, personally, it's probably been well over 30 long years now, a significant period of time. For over 30 years, I've been observing both men and women, monastics and lay people. On one hand, I have to teach them all, and on the other hand, I have to manage a lot of their behaviors. In the process of managing, I am actually more wary of women in certain situations. When speaking with women, you really have to be cautious and very mindful. For example, when 3 women come over, you have to be careful when interacting with them in any given setting. Otherwise, you might end up offending many of them. But with men, it's not an issue. They're more easygoing. You can say whatever you want and it's fine. Nothing much comes of it. Even though we are monastics, generally speaking, these things probably don't really happen, like so-called jealousy or all sorts of very subtle details or various kinds of mutual unhappiness. These things usually don't occur, but from people's demeanor, by observing their words and expressions, you can still notice some subtle things. For example, someone suddenly becomes unhappy for no apparent reason, or from then on someone just stops talking to others for no reason at all. It's not just that they ignore me. With a certain lama or great teacher, many people experience this. She just becomes like that. It's a pity when that happens. They were a good Buddhist practitioner, but now they distance themselves. It's sad to see them leave this community. I can't help but feel regret, but there's nothing we can do. Every sentient being has their own unique causes and conditions. So sometimes men and women, there are indeed good people and bad people among both. You can't generalize. But sometimes, whether one's personal afflictions are truly heavy or not, or whether one's mind is indeed narrow or not, in this particular regard, women tend to be just a little bit more so. That is precisely why, in some specific cases, the Buddha himself said, of course, we shouldn't say too much about women either. Otherwise, as stated in the Tantric vows of Buddhism, if you slander women in general, you truly break a fundamental and sacred vow. So, the Buddha, with his great compassion, spoke very wisely about these important matters in the broader context. All sentient beings possess the Buddha nature and its qualities. That should be a very good thing. But in terms of appearances, There may be a few slight differences. In any case, that's indeed how it is the case. So universal vast, if there is a woman who dislikes her own unattractive appearance, or if she is often ill in such cases, if she sincerely venerates and pays homage before an image of Ksitigarbha, even if it's just for the brief time it takes to eat a full meal, just during the precious time it takes to eat at that very moment, then, for countless eons to come, the body she is born with will be perfect in appearance. If this woman, who might be considered unattractive by some, does not feel weary or disgusted with her state of being female, then for an incredibly vast and immeasurable period, spanning hundreds of thousands of millions of eons, she will be reborn into positions of immense privilege and power, specifically as a revered princess or a highly esteemed queen consort, or as a woman of a prime minister's family, or as a woman in the household of a great elder, and so on, with especially dignified and perfect features. This will be the case. Therefore, one should pray with utmost sincerity and wholeheartedly venerate the profound merits of the sacred image of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva with deep reverence. Also, by bowing and venerating the merits of this Bodhisattva's image, these are indeed the significant benefits one will certainly obtain. Indeed, if we truly wish to have truly dignified and attractive features, then, on one hand, we should pray to Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva. There's really no need for any cosmetic surgery or makeup. Just invite a statue of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva and quickly pray to become especially good-looking. After praying for 2 or 3 days, you look in the mirror again and see that you still haven't really become any more attractive at all. Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva, why exactly haven't you made me attractive? If you keep doing this, then at a certain point, Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva will also be moved, and it will definitely happen. In the past, the Vajra woman was finally blessed by the Buddha and transformed into an especially dignified and beautiful form. So for those of us who are really dissatisfied with our overall current appearance, praying to Ksitigarbha is beneficial. Right, we'll stop here for today.
Bandharangara Padmasada Bandharangara Padmasada